How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Zayin, Daf 67 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, your friends. I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? 67. Talking about Mesis, Mediach, exciting sugyas like that. We're going to start the Mishnah on the top of Daf Samach Zayin Amid Aleph. Zog the Mishnah Mesis Zehedyet. Okay, what's a mesis? A mesis is somebody who convinces somebody else to worship Avodah Zarah. Okay, so Shimon says to Reuven, Reuven, you gotta try out this Avodah Zarah. It's going to change your life. It's the best thing ever. That's a mesis. So we're saying mesis zehedjet. So Shimon, right, the mesis, he is a Hajj is a regular guy, as Rashi points out, as opposed to a Navi. We're not talking about a Navi. A Navi would be, because we're talking about Skila, right? A Navi who's Mesis, we're saying would be Chenek. A different story, Nander Zach. But a regular person, Shimon, is Mesis Ruvain. Shimon is Chayiv Skila. Mesis is a Hajj. And who's the target of it? Ruvain. Who's Ruvain? Ruvain's a regular guy, as opposed to an Ir Nidachas. If Shimon goes and convinces a whole city, that's an Ir Nidachas, that's already different, but that's Besayif, that's not Beskila, that's a different story. Okay, so again, a Mesis is a Hajj. So the Mesis, Shimon, he's just a regular guy. The Mesis es a Hajj, and who's the target? Ochit, Ruvain is a regular guy. Omar, Shimon says to Ruvain, Yesh Yir b'mokim pleni, there's a getchke in such a place, Kach Echeles, Kach Shesa, Kach Metiva, Kach Maria, this is what it eats, this is what it drinks, it does this great gewaldige thing, I guess does that bad, horrible thing? I don't know, but I'm telling you, this getchke is the best thing it ever was. Now, in general, when it comes to chiyuvei misa, we don't try to set somebody up, I imagine an investigator trying to set up a drug dealer or something to try to get them to sell them drugs so that they can get them in trouble for drug dealing. Generally we don't do that. We don't try to set people up for murder cases or Mikalis Hashem or so. We don't generally try to set somebody up so that we can kill them. That is not the case when it comes to a mesis. If a person is trying to convince others to do Avodah Zarah, we will try to trick them we will try to kind of set them up in order to frame them. Meaning, assuming that they are in fact convincing people to do Avodah Zarah. So, in general, when it comes to capital punishment in the Torah, we don't try to frame people. We don't try to set people up so that they will be chayiv. Chutz mizo, the only exception being mesis, somebody who's trying to convince others to do Avodah Zarah. Amar l'shnayim hen edav. If Shimon says to two people, hey, let's go, why don't you go and serve the getchke? So those two people will serve as the witnesses against Shimon. And we also the Bezdin, we bring Shimon to Bezdin, v'soklan also and is chayiv skila. Amar le'echad, if Shimon just says directly to Reuven, only one-on-one, so there's no witnesses, just one-on-one, Hu Omer, Yesh Chaverim, Rotzim B'chach. So then Reuven says to Shimon, Shimon, wow, this sounds like a great idea. I have some friends, why don't you go tell all of us? And if Shimon was tricky, sneaky, he's wait a second, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to tell one-on-one, fine beseder. Reuven's just one guy. He can't serve as two witnesses against me. He's just one guy. But I'm not telling a group. They could get me in trouble. So if Shimon is, Shimon's too smart. He knows not to try to convince a group of people because they could become witnesses against him. And he says, look, I can't speak to the group. So we hide witnesses, we set up witnesses behind the fence. And Reuven says to Shimon, hey Shimon, can you please repeat to me what you had told to me the other day one-on-one? Vala Omerlo, and Shimon says, yeah, this is what I said, right? This is a Gavaldige Getchke, come. Vu Omerlo, Heach naniach es Elokeinu shebashamayim v'nelech v'naved eitzim v'avonim. And Reuven says, wait, but how could it be that we're going to replace the Rabbanu Shalom with trees and stones? That's ridiculous. So im chozbo arei ze mutav. If Shimon says, you know what, you're right, this makes no sense, so then givaldik. Vim omer kachi chovosenu. But if Shimon digs in, he says, no, this is what we need to do. We need to worship trees and stones. Kach yofe lanu. It's beautiful for us to worship trees and stones. Ha'om de machori agedim mevin also the bezdin. Well, then those witnesses who were hidden behind the wall, they now come and bring him to Bezdin, and they serve as the witnesses. And he gets stoned. Homer avod elech v'avod nelech v'navod. So I believe that this is what the Maces is saying to the guy, right? Shimon is saying, right, I'm going to go do avodah zarah, or so he says, I'm going to worship Avodah Zarah, I'm going to go and worship Avodah Zarah, let us go and worship Avodah Zarah. Ezbach, elich ve'ezbach, nelich v'nizbach. I will slaughter, I will go and slaughter, let's go and slaughter. Aktir, elich ve'aktir, nelich v'naktir, anasech, elich v'anasech, nelich v'anasech, eshtach ve'elich ve'eshtach ve'nelich v'neshtach ve'eshtach. Any of those lishonis of Avodah Zarah would be considered macing. Alright. Givaldik. Oh, excuse me. Alright, Gewalden. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Maces ze hedjit. Okay, so we say that the Maces, Shimon, is just a regular guy. Okay, time the hedjitu. So the reason why he's chayiv skila, the reason why Shimon is chayiv skila is because he's just a regular guy. Hanavi, but if he was a navi, if he was a prophet, bechenek, well then his punishment would be chenek. If a Maces is a hedjit, and somebody who Maces is a hedjit, the target is a hedjit, Reuven's just a regular guy. So time of the yochid, so that's just because Reuven's just one single guy. Harabim, but if it was like a whole city, so then bechenek, then it would be chenek, right? Yonidachas, right? Madiach Yonidachas is bechenek. Givaldik. In the Mishnah? What did I say? In the Mishnah, was I talking about? Did I mention Saif? I don't know what I said when I was explaining the Mishnah, but anyways, whatever I'm saying now is correct, right? That if, right, so meaning Shimon is chayiv skila because Ruvain is an individual, but if Shimon convinced right, if it was an irani dachas, so then a madiach irani dachas is not beskila, it's bechenek. Masnisa mani Reb Shimoni, the author of our Mishnah is Reb Shimon, the Tana that we learned in the Brisa. Novi she'ediach beskila. According to the Tanakama, a prophet that convinces others to do avodah zarah is beskila. However, Reb Shimon omer bechenek. Reb Shimon, however, says chenek, and that is what our Mishnah is saying, or at least that's what we want to say. That our Mishnah is saying that that Shimon is just a regular guy, but if he's a navi, it would not be beskila, it would be bechenek. Madicher nidachas beskila, says the Tanakama. A madiach nidachas, somebody who convinces a city to do avodah zarah, is beskila, but Reb Shimon omer bechenek. Reb Shimon says it is bechenek, and therefore we want to say that our Mishnah is Reb Shimon, because our Mishnah says that Shimon is a regular guy, implying that if he was a navi, it would be a different story. And also we're saying that Reuven is just an individual, but if it was a city, it would be a different story. That's like Reb Shimon, who says that if it's a navi who's mediach, so then it would be bechenek, and if it was a mediach iranidachas is also bechenek. Ema sefer, but for the Gemara, what about the sefer mediach? That if we look at the next Mishnah that we're going to learn probably in about 5-10 minutes from now, so it says so hamadiach. What's a madiach? That when the Mishnah on Daf Nun Gimel had talked about Eluin and Ischal, and these are the people that are chayiv skila, and when it says hamadiach, what does it say over there? It says let's go. Hameses v'amadiach. There you go. So we're talking about Mesis in our Mishnah, but the next Mishnah that we're going to learn in a few minutes says Hamadiach, that when we say that Madiach is Chayiv Skila, what's that? Somebody says, let us go worship Avodah Zarah, V'omer of Yehuda Omer Rab, and says of Yehuda Omer Rab, Madiche Nidachas Shanu. That we're talking about Madiche Nidachas, i.e., our Mishnah is about to say in a few minutes, the upcoming Mishnah, says that Madiach Nidachas is Beskila. So now this is tricky. If we're saying that our Mishnah that we just read right now, that says that when it comes to Mesis, the target, Ruvain, is an individual, but if he were to be an Ir Nidachas, well then, if Shimon was convincing in a city, so then Shimon would not get Skila, he would get Chenek. But the next Mishnah coming up, Davka, is talking about Madiach Ir Nidachas, and it's saying that it's Beskila. So this is weird. On the one hand, we're saying that the Mishnah that we just learned, the Reisha, let's call it, the Reisha we're saying is Reb Shimon, that Madiach Ir Nidachas is Bechenek, and yet the Seifa is the Chachamim, that Madiach Ir Nidachas is Beskila. This is weird. Right, so Asan Rabbanon, right, the upcoming Mishnah, the Seifa is the rabbis who say Madiach Ir Nidachas is Beskila. Reisha, Reb Shimon, V'Seifa Rabbanon. How could it be that the Reisha is Reb Shimon, and that the Reisha is Reb Shimon, that Madiach Ir Nidachas is Bechenek, and the Seifa is the Chacham, that Madiach Ir Nidachas is Beskila. So Ravina Omar Kula Rabbanon he. So Ravina says, Taka, no, the Reisha and the Seifa are the rabbis, that Madiach Ir Nidachas is Beskila. Velozo Av Zo Katani. And it's not saying that Reuven is an individual, that's why Shimon is Chayiv Skila, but that if Reuven, but if Shimon convinced the city, it would not be Beskila. No, that's not the point. It's saying not only this, but even this. Meaning the Reisha is saying if Shimon convinces Reuven, who is an individual, so then Shimon is going to be Chayiv Skila. And not only that, but then the Seifa continues and says, it's all one flow. And the Seifa continues and says, and also if Shimon convinces a city to Avodah Zarah, also it would be Beskila. So the whole thing is the Chacham who say Madiche Ir Nidachas is Beskila. V'Papa Amar says V'Papa ki katani mesis ze hejit leachmono. Says Rav Papa that in the Reisha, where it says that Shimon is just a regular guy. Shimon is just a regular guy. We wanted to say that implies that if, however, he was a Navi, it would be Chenek and not Skila, like Reb Shimon. We say no. That also is like the rabbis, that even if Shimon is a Navi, it would also be Skila, right? And it says of Papa, Omar Kikatani Meses Zehedjet, that when the Mishnah says that Shimon is just a regular guy, Leachmono, so that is talking about for tricking. The Tanya is one of the advice that all other misas in the Torah, in machminin alein chutz mi zo, that this is the only scenario where we kind of hide, right, trick people and try to frame them. Ketzad osin lo, how do we do it? Madlikan do asaner, we light a candle b'bayis hapnimi, so we kind of illuminate the inner room. Moshivin lo eidim b'bayis hachitzon, and then in the outer area we hide witnesses without a candle, without any light. They're in the dark. They are hiding there. Kadeshu hein roin oso, so that the witnesses who are in the dark area would be able to see what's going on in the light area, where Shimon is about to convince Reuven to do avodah zarah. V'shomen eskolo, and the witnesses can hear what Shimon is saying. V'u'eno roe osan, and Shimon does not see the witnesses. V'alo omerlo ever masha amarto libi yichud, and then Reuven says to Shimon, Shimon, tell me what you told me when we were one-on-one. V'u'omerlo, and Shimon says this to Reuven. V'alo omerlo, wait, what? Okay, V'alo omerlo, and then Reuven says to Shimon, how could it be that we're going to leave the Ribbana Shalom to go and serve avodah zarah? If Shimon says, you know what, Reuven, you're right, we shouldn't be worshipping avodah zarah. Mamash Gaval. But if Shimon says that this is our obligation, we have to serve Avodah Zarah, well then, well, then the witnesses who hear this, right, and they're in kind of the outer area, hiding out there, they go and bring him to Bezdin and kill him. So the point is that the Mesa Zehedjit, when we say that Shimon is a Hedjit, it's not to imply that, but if he was a Navi, it would be Bechenek. No, it was the point was that we wanted to kind of teach this point. The main thing was we wanted to teach this point about framing Shimon and how normally we don't frame people, but here we do frame people. I guess that was really the point, but not to imply that a Navi would be Bechenek. Okay, fine. That sounds exciting. Okay, 1 second. Right, so Navi amazing Gatani Ella call Mesisim. That was what it was, right? Call Mesisim Kari Adjotis, right? Says Rashi. Right, meaning when we say Mesis Zehedjit, what we're saying is not right, okay, great, thanks. Right, so meaning so Rashi explains that when we say Mesis Zehedjit, it doesn't mean that Shimon is a regular guy to imply that, but if he was a Navi, it would be Bechenek. No, Zehedjit means a Mesis, whoever the Mesis is, whether he's a Hedjit, whether he's a Navi, it doesn't matter. But because he is convincing others to do Avodah Zarah, we treat him like a Hedjit, like a nothing, like nobody special. And we don't, normally we would try to save people. Over here, we're just going to try to frame him. He's meh. He's just a Hedjit that we're going to try to frame and get him killed. So that's what it means. He's like, sorry, what does Rashi say? He says, Kari Hedjotis Mishum Achmana Klomar Mesis Hedjit Vishotu. He's a fool. We treat him, we shemakilim b'chayev. We don't even take his life seriously. We're going to try to frame him. We're going to hide. We're going to try to get him in trouble because he's convincing others to do Avodah Zarah. That's what it means. A hedjit, not to imply that a navi would have a different halacha. No. Okay. And then we explained how we try to frame him with the inner house, the outer house. Fine. Now, says the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, what's a madiach? A madiach is somebody who says, let's go and do avodah zarah. And as the Gemara is going to say, that's talking about an ir nidacha. Somebody convinces a city, hey, city, we got to do avodah zarah. It's the bomb diggity. Hamachashev, okay, a machshefer, somebody who does hocus pocus. Somebody who actually does hocus pocus is chayiv. Not somebody who's just like, making tricks. He's not really doing hocus pocus. He's just, making it look like he's doing hocus pocus, but really he's not. Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Kiva Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Kiva, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Givaldig. Shnaim Loktin Kishun, if you have two people who are gathering gourds, one of them could be potter from witchcraft, from hocus pocus, and the other one could be chayiv. If he's like actually like gathering gourds by like doing incantations and magically moving them into a pile, well then yeah, he's gonna be chayiv for that, for hocus pocus. Hocus is an potter, but if he's just like, making it look like he's magically moving gourds around, but really he's just like making it look as if they kind of moved into a pile, but I guess they were there the whole time. I don't know, but makes it look that way. Well, then he's going to be a potter. Okay. Says the Gemara. Okay, so Rav Yehuda says in Rav that the Mishnah, when we're talking about the Madiach, that's talking about Madiche Iranidachas, and that's Be Skila. Okay, the Mishnah then continued and said, okay, Machshefer is somebody who actually does hocus pocus. Tanarabana, the Rabbi taught, Machshefer, whether the Machshefer is a man, whether the Machshefer is a woman. Then why are we saying Machshefer? Machshefer is, it's female. Well, most Machshefers are women. Therefore, we say machshefer in the female, but it would apply to men as well. Misasim b'ma. Okay, what's the deal with their death? Rabbi Yossi Aglili Yomi says, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Nemar Kan Machshefer Lo Schaya V'Nemalon Lo Schaya Kol Neshama. Well, it says by Machshefer Lo Schaya, and it says by the Shivas Amimim, it says Lo Schaya Kol Neshama. Malholin B'Sayif Avkan B'Sayif. Just like by the Sheva Amim in Eretz Yisrael, when the Eden got to Eretz Yisrael, so they went to battle with swords. So here also Machshefer, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, would be B'Sayif. Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Kiva Nemar Kan Machshefer Le'Schaya V'Nemalholin Im Beimam Ish Lo Yichya. Wait, it says by Machshefer Le'Schaya, and it says by Har Sinai. We just read Aseres Adibris. It says in Beimam Ish Lo Yichya, that don't go on the mountain, and if you do, you won't live. Malholin B'Skila Avkan B'Skila. Right? It says I think it says Soko Yisoko Lo Yore Yore in Beimam Ish Lo Yichya. I think it was that same pasuk actually. Loisiga bayad kisoko yisoko lo yore yore beimem ish lo yichya bim shechayevel hemayalu v'har. Right, I just read the pasuk. So just like over there where it says in beimem ish lo yichya, that's beskila avkan. So also by machshefer it's beskila. Amar Rabbi Yasi. Rabbi Yasi says to Rabbi Akiva, Ani danti lo schaya mi lo schaya. I learned equal words, right? Lo schaya from lo schaya, to say sword. V'ata danta lo schaya mi lo yichya. But you're learning lo schaya from lo yichya. Those are two different words. Schaya, yichya. Rabbi Kiva says, look, Ani danti Yisrael mi Yisrael shriba nakosav misas haibe. Look, I'm learning Yidden from Yidden. Right? I'm learning Machshefer, who's a Yid, from people who went to Har Sinai, also Yidden. But you're learning Yisrael from the Sheva Amim, which is Oiv Dekhovim Shaloy B'Bein HaKosav Ella Misa Achas, that they only have Saif. So Kilu, by Yidden, where there's lots of different Misas Bezdin, and we're saying specifically this particular one, right? So meaning Yidden have lots of Misas Bezdin, and we're saying, well, by Har Sinai was specifically Skila. So here also by Machshefer, we're talking about out of all the Misas Bezdin, specifically Skila. But you're bringing me a proof, argues Rabbi Kiva, from the Sheva Amim, where all of their deaths are Skila. Right? It's not, I guess there aren't as many options, but by the Yidden there are more options, and I guess we want to know which options we learn from Yidden, and that way we can learn that we're talking specifically about Skila. Okay. Benazai says Benazai Nemar Machshefer Le'Schaya V'Nemar Kol Shochim Beima Mos Yumos. That says Benazai, the pasuk says Machshefer Le'Schaya, and immediately the next pasuk is Kol Shochim Behema Mos Yumos. So some Samchu Inyan Lo, the reason for the juxtaposition is Mashechiv Behema Beskila Af Mechashiv Beskila. Just like sleeping with an animal is Beskila, so then Ochit. That's funny. Then Ochit a Machshefer is also Beskila. Okay. Givaldig. Okay. Anyways. Okay. Beskila Machashiv Beskila. Where are we? Okay. Okay, Machshefer is also Beskila. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda to Ben Azai, V'chim Pnei, Shesamchu Inyan Lo, Notzi Lezeh Beskila. 1 second. So it says Rabbi Yehuda to Ben Azai, 1 second. You're telling me that Machshefer is Beskila just because the next pasuk is Shochim Behema Mos Yumos, and that's Beskila, so just because it happens to be that these two pasukim are next to each other, you're going to say that a Machshefer is going to get stoned, the most severe of all capital punishments, at least according to Rabbanan. Ella, rather, Ov v'yidoni b'chlal Machshefim hayu. Rather, Ov v'yidoni, right? The pasuk specifically says by Ov v'yidoni that they are Beskila. The thing is, Ov v'yidoni, what is that? Hocus pocus, Machshefer. So, Ov v'yidoni were included in just being Machshefer. So then why were they singled out? V'loma yotzu, why were they singled out? Lahakish alein, well, in order to then be able to compare them to all Machshefers, to say ma'ov yadoni b'skila af machashiv b'skila. To say that just like Ov Yidoni is Beskila, so all Machshefers are Beskila. They're representing, right, right, that they are representing the entire category of Machshefers to say that all Machshefers are Beskila. The Reb Yehuda Nami Lahavu Ov Yidoni Shteksu Boim Kecha. But 1 second. But Reb Yehuda, why are we saying that? Because Ov Yidoni are Beskila, therefore all Machshefers are Beskila. Why don't we say that Ov and Yidoni are Shnei Ksuvim Boin Ke'echad? Kilu, what does that mean? I think we've most definitely seen Shnei Ksuvim Boin Ke'echad before. Shnei Ksuvim Boin Ke'echad is that when if you have like a halacha by, if like we would only have skila by Ov, let's say, so we say, okay, just like Ov is Beskila, so all Machshefers is Beskila. But it's not only in one place. There are 2 places where we have this halacha. So then we have to say, wait, if we want to teach about the whole category, so just say it in one place and we'll learn it, it will apply to the whole category. But we're saying it's in 2 cases only, then it's like, wait, why these 2 cases? Maybe it's only these 2 cases. If it was to teach about the whole category, just tell me in one case and we'll apply it to the whole category. But now that you're saying 2 cases, like why specifically write these 2 cases? Maybe it's only these 2 cases. So therefore, right, Ov Yidoni Shnei Ksuvim Boin Ke'echad, so maybe it's only by Ov and Yidoni that it's skila, not by the whole category. When you have 2 halacha in 2 places, well then we can't apply it generally to the whole category because maybe it's only those 2 places. So Reb Zechariah Ada Amra says, Reb Zechariah, well this seems to imply that Kasav Reb Yehuda said that Reb Yehuda holds Shnei Ksuvim Boin Ke'echad milamdin, that according to Reb Yehuda you can apply, right? Even when you have a halacha in 2 places, you could say, yeah, well, just like in those 2 places, you can also apply it generally to the category. Okay? And therefore, Reb Yehuda says that just like Ov Yidoni is Beskila, so Ochit, the whole category of Machshefers, is Beskila. Amr B'Yechon says, Kshofim. Why is it called Kshofim? Kshofim stands for, it's like an acronym for Shemakrishin Pamalia Shomaila. Okay? That they weaken the Pamalia Shomaila. Kilu, right? It's like if the heaven decided that one thing should happen, now Hocus Pocus can come and like change the plans. Einod Milvada, the pasuk says that there is none other than the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amr B'Chanina says, B'Chanina afilu le Dvar Kshofim. Now, it says Reb Chanina that even applies to Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus cannot change God's plans. Einod Mavada, there's nothing other than God. There was a woman who wanted to, take dirt from like under Reb Chanina's feet, and somehow she was going to do Hocus Pocus with that. So he says to her, Imistayaz Zili Avidi, look, if you think that you're going to be able to do any Hocus Pocus, be my guest. After all, the pasuk says there's none other than God. Whatever God wants happens. Your Hocus Pocus has no effect. Ini, is that true? But 1 second, Rabbi Yochanan Dafka said that Hocus Pocus can affect the plans of the Rebbeinu Shalom, or the Pamaya Shemayla. Shani Reb Chanina Dinofesh Zchuse. Yeah, Enochinami. Reb Chanina, however, because he had a lot of merit, he was the great Reb Chanina, so then, therefore he in particular was not concerned about any kind of Hocus Pocus. Omer Aiva bar Nagri, Omer Reb Chia bar Abba, Biloteim Elu Maisa Shadim. Okay, if it says Loteim without a hey, then we're talking about demons. Bilohoteim Elu Maisa Kshofim. That's Hocus Pocus without demons. And similarly, it says lahat acher misapeches, that right? It says that when Adam was removed and expelled from the Garden of Eden, it says that there was a lahat acher misapeches that was put there to prevent anybody from going back. And there it's with a hey to indicate that it's specifically Hocus Pocus, but no demons. Abai the kopit amono shade the lo kopit amono kshofim. Okay, it says Abai that if there's insistence on a particular vessel in order to do some kind of Hocus Pocus, well then it's a shade, then there's some kind of demon involved. But if it can be done with any kind of vessel, I guess, not a specific vessel, well then it's just Hocus Pocus. Okay, fine. 1 1 second. Okay. Misha makbid ala kli she'enu yachol lazos davar below kli aroi laoso davar kagon shari boy and shetzichin sakin shekato shachav shari kosh okay. If in order to do some kind of hocus pocus, you need a specific kind of vessel, so then it's with demons. But if you don't need a specific kind of vessel, then it's just hocus pocus. All right. Abai says Abai hilchos kshafim kilchos Shabbos. Says Abai that the laws of hocus pocus, like the laws of Shabbos, yesh me'en b'skila. There are those that are skila, okay, yesh me'en pater aval aser. To those that you are not chayiv skila or anything, but it's nonetheless aser. Yesh me'en mutar l'chatchila. There are those that are mamish permitted, mutar l'chatchila. Ha'osa ma'isa b'skila, somebody who does hocus pocus, mamish does hocus pocus, well then, as we said in the Mishnah, chayiv skila. Ha'ochez esoinayim pater aval aser. Somebody who just like, makes like illusions or whatever makes you believe that there's some kind of hocus pocus, but in fact no hocus pocus pocused. So then you're not allowed to do that, but you're not going to be chayiv for anything. Mutar l'chatchila, and what's permitted? Kedav Chanina, V'Boshaya, Kol Maile Shabso, Havu Aske Bilchus Yitzira. Like we learned the other day that what daf on Samachet 2 days ago, that Rav Chanina, Boshaya, every Erev Shabbos they would learn Sefer Yitzira, Umibrelu Igletilsa, V'Achlele, and they would create using, I guess, Kabbalah or whatever. They would create a calf, a gevaldiga, geschmacke calf that they would eat. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi chazina le lavua de Karna. Rav Ashi says, I saw the father of Karna, de nofetz ushdi kriche de shiroi min chire. I don't remember, he was like blowing like silk out of his nose or something like that. That's cool. Vayomar chatumim el pare etz be'eloyim he. The Pirates, hocus pocusers, told him by kinim, look, this is the finger of God. Amar Reb Elazar, Amar Belazar says Belazar, mikan she'ein ashed yochol livros birya pachos mikisoyo. Right? When it came to lice, all of a sudden the hocus pocusers said, this is the this is beyond us. This is the finger of God. So we see that the demons are unable to create things that are smaller than a barley kernel. No, demons can't create anything. They can't even create, right? We're saying you can't create something less than a size of barley. They can't create anything, even as big as a camel. The difference is that for bigger things, the demons can gather together these bigger things, whereas by the smaller things, they can't. All right. Rab says to Reb Chia, his uncle, I saw, says Rav to Reb Chia, that I saw a Arab that he took a sword and he cut up his camel into pieces. Then he rang a bell, and all the pieces got back together and the camel got up. Reb Chia says to Rav, I think he was just, pulling your leg over there. After he rang the bell and the camel got up, were there like guts and blood all over the place? No. He was just pulling your leg. He was just tricking you. It wasn't actually hocus pocus. Zeiri went to Alexandria in Egypt. So van Chamora, he bought a donkey. And then he went to drink, give it water to drink. Posher, some kind of incantation that was on the donkey, ended. Vikom gamla duskinisa, and the donkey just became like a plank, like a board of duskinisa wood. So it wasn't actually a donkey; it was just some kind of trickery. Amrulay. So when he went to return the donkey, the quote unquote donkey, they said to him, Ilav Zeiri at, if not for the fact that you are the great Zeiri, lo avamajinalach, I would not give you back your money. Because after all, look, you're in Alexandria. We're all a bunch of witches over here. Like, nobody buys anything in this place without first checking it out on water. Because I guess when you go to drink it, water is when the incantation when the magic kind of freezes up or whatever ends. Anyways, I guess in Alexandria there was lots of hocus pocus. Zeiri accidentally bought a hocus pocus donkey that was really just a board of wood, but they gave him his money back because he's the great Zeiri. Yanai ikla lau ushpiza. Yanai visited a certain Kretschmer. Omar Lu, he said to them, Hashkayin Maya, I'd like some water. Krivu shtisa, they brought him shtisa. Chazad the kom reaction sivasa, and as he was drinking it, he noticed that the waitress who had brought the shtisa to him was moving her lips. Shada porta mine, so Yanai spilled out a shtickle of the shtisa, haba akrave, and it turned to scorpions. Like some kind of hocus pocus going on over there. Omelahu, he says to them, Ono shasoy mididchu, look, I drank whatever it was that you gave me. Atunami shasumi didi, you now drink from what I have. Ashke havoy chamora, he gave her epis to drink and she turned into a donkey. Rochva, he then went and rode on this donkey. Solik l'shuka, and he went to the market. Also chaverta, but then this waitress's friend came and pashala and undid the magic. Chazi derochiv v'koi ha'itza b'shuka, and what ended up happening was she turned back into a human being, and Yanai was riding on a woman in the market. V'talat tzvardeya, but the Chazal says, the pasuk says by the frogs that the tzvardeya singular covered Egypt. Amr Belazar says, it was one frog, Hishritza, but it had many, many little frogs come out of it. Umala is called and all those little frogs then went and covered all of Egypt. It was one frog, Umala called Eretz Mitzrayim, and it filled up all of Egypt. Amr Belazar ben Azariah says, Akiva, what are you doing with Agadata? Learn the technical sugyas, negoyim, oihalos. Don't be teaching interesting sugyas about frogs. Rather, says Abelaz ben Azariah, no, it was one frog, and it called out to all of the other frogs, and they all answered the call and came. Oh, Zoy. Okay, so that was Daf Samach Zayin of Masechta Sanhedrin. We learned some interesting things. We're talking about mesis. And the halachis there about how we try to trick them, and the chayiv skila. We saw machlokas Tanakama and the Chachamim about what if the mesis is a navi. Tanakama says it's also beskila. Reb Shimon says it's bechenek. What if the target is there a difference between an individual versus an nidachas? Again, we saw machlokas Tanakama and Reb Shimon. Tanakama says no, it would also be beskila. Reb Shimon says that nidachas amadiach, nidachas is bechenek. Then we got into Nidachas a little bit, and we started having some like Agadata kind of stuff. So pretty interesting stuff. Peace out.